Welcome to a Sunny Side Up Life podcast, a show for the woman who is ready to live an abundant life full of freedom and positivity. I'm Sami and I'm on a mission to help you break free from survival mode, gain financial freedom, stay motivated, and focus on what matters most. Join the movement and let's start living on the brighter side of life together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode. On today's episode, we are going to talk about 5 different ways to pay off your debt. So, did you know that there are actually more than the 2 most common ways? Most of us have heard of the Debt Snowball Method, and maybe you've even heard of the Debt Avalanche Method. But yes, there are actually 3 more than these 2 common methods. We're going to dig into those in some more detail. I'm going to give you some examples of those. We're going to explore these different options and hopefully try to help you figure out which way is best for you. So this is something that when I am doing one-on-one coaching, I get to actually sit down with the client, face to face. I get to know all of their numbers. I get to know, all of their debt, all of their bills, their income, their spending habits, every single aspect of the numbers. And honestly, this is the best way for you to decide, or for me to give you advice on how to decide which debt payoff method is best for you. Because without knowing all of the background information, without knowing, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are your goals, where are you at, how much money do you have left over, how tight is your budget, just all of these different aspects, I honestly can't give you a 100%, this plan is right for you without knowing all of those facts. And that's what I love to tell people when we first start coaching, when we jump on one of the free strategy calls together, is like, hey, this is one of the benefits of doing one-on-one coaching, is that I can get in there and give you that specific advice that I can't give you through the podcast or through YouTube or through an Instagram post or through a DM or an email, because I don't know all of the facts of your specific situation. So first of all, remember that as we're kind of going through all of these different options, don't take just one method and run with it, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But I want you to remember most of all that personal finance is personal. And just because you see one person doing it one way on social media or in a blog or in a video or something doesn't mean that that is the only way. And it also doesn't mean that that is necessarily the best method for you. Okay. Personal finance is personal, and there's no way for an outsider to know what way is best for you unless they know literally every single inch of your budget, every single aspect, all of your debt, all of your bills, your income, your spending habits, your personality, your strengths and weaknesses, and all of that. Okay. So that's just my little disclaimer before we jump into the different aspects. Okay. So let's start with the most popular is the Debt Snowball. Okay. Actually, before we jump into that, I actually asked on my Instagram the other day, on my Instagram story. Side note, if you don't follow me over there, you're missing out. So follow me, A Sunny Side Up Life, over on Instagram. Getting super, super close to hitting 11,000 followers, which is super amazing. But anyway, I asked my Instagram followers which debt payoff method they had used. Okay. And I got 22 answers. So I feel like we got a pretty good variety going on. Okay. So out of those 22, 12 people said Snowball, 6 people said Avalanche, 1 person said the one that pisses them off the most. Shout out to her. Love it. And then 3 people said kind of combos, kind of hybrids, okay? one of those three people said the snowball, and then they consolidated their student loan debt. Another person said they snowballed their minimums, and then any extra money they got, they applied it to a high interest debt. And another person said that they did the Avalanche method, but then with their stimulus checks, they're paying off their student loans just for the sake of, hey, I don't want student loans anymore, okay, for the joy of it, basically. Okay, so that's a little sneak peek into all of the different methods, but that gives you kind of a variety and kind of, maybe a focus group study of a good percentage of people. So about almost half of these people that answered said that they use the snowball, which leads me to, let's talk about the snowball method, and that it's usually the go-to. It is probably the most popular, mostly because it has been popularized by Dave Ramsey. And so, obviously it's going to be really well known. So the debt snowball method is basically the idea that you take your lowest balance and you basically would line up all of your debts. Lowest balance first, second, third, in order from lowest to highest balance. And then you would take any extra money that you had and you would apply it to the smallest balance until the smallest balance is paid off. Then you would take any of your extra money and apply it to the second smallest, as well as the minimum payment that you used to pay for your lowest. Okay? And you would just kind of roll it. You would start small and roll it bigger, which is where the idea of snowball comes into effect. It starts small, you keep rolling until it's really big, and then you're at the really high balances, right? So this is, like I said, the most popular method, I think. It's the most widely known. It's the most widely talked about. And a lot of people start here because it gives you that quick win. And I kind of feel like it's the default. Like if you don't know what else to do, most people will just start with the debt snowball. Maybe because that's the only one they know of, or maybe because it's a quick win, or maybe both, right? So to give you an example, I'm going to link to a few Instagram people that I follow, some of my Instagram friends who have done these different methods. And Marilee from Easy Budget is someone who I know does the debt snowball method, or she did the debt snowball method, and she's kind of popularized it as well as too. So if you're looking for examples of people who have done this, I'm going to link to all the people I've mentioned in the show notes. So like I said, this is a quick win, and this is like, hey, this lowest balance is $50, $100, usually it's like a really small credit card or a lingering medical bill or something super small like that. You can get that super quick win. You can be like, yes, I paid something off. It also frees up a little bit of extra money, and you can kind of roll it into that second one. And so sometimes we love these quick wins, especially if I'm working with a client who's just super overwhelmed. Like, I don't know, I've got to get something gone. Let's just start with this one. It'll be easy. I can get it paid off like this month or next month usually, and it'll be gone. All right, so that's number one. Number two is the avalanche method. And the avalanche method is where you start with the highest interest. And then you're, knocking down the mountain kind of. That's where that avalanche comes from. You're starting at the top of this mountain, and you're working on the highest interest first, then second highest interest, third high, in that order is the way you would line them up. And the same thing, like you would apply any extra money to this highest interest. When it's paid off, you would roll any extra money to the second highest, as well as what you used to pay of the minimum on that first highest interest. And again, the idea here is that, the math, right? You don't want to put off that highest interest debt and you don't want to drag it out any longer than you possibly have to because look at all the debt I'm paying on it, right? So when you're like, I need to save the money, like this math doesn't, and some people, that's just the way they're wired. And also sometimes some of these credit cards are in the teen percents, 15%, 18%, even 22, 24%. These are some crazy, crazy interest rates. And you're like, hey, the math makes sense for me to do this avalanche method. All right. So again, that was the one that was 6 out of 22 people. So like a fourth, maybe somewhere in there of people use the avalanche method. It's the second most popular. All right. The third method that I want to talk about is the most hated debt method. Okay. And this is what I did. I had one person answer this out of 22. And Ashley from Ash Saves Cash is someone who uses this method. And I think if we're being honest, a lot of us probably do use this method at one point or another. I know a lot of people who they'll pick, like a lot of my one-on-one clients for sure. They'll be like, hey, can I just pay this one off first and then I'll go to the snowball method or then I'll go to the avalanche, but a lot of times people have that one thing that they've just got to get gone. Either they hate it or it causes them the most stress. It's lingering over them. Sometimes it's they owe a family member or a friend money. Sometimes we've borrowed money from a parent or a sibling or a friend, and it's just making the relationship awkward and it's causing so much stress that we want to pay it first. Sometimes it's just something like, maybe it's something that you feel really stupid about. Maybe it's like you financed some furniture. You financed something that you feel like you really shouldn't have financed. You maybe got carried away with like a shopper's credit card, like a Target card or an Amazon card or Best Buy or something like that. You got carried away and you're like, ugh, it brings so much guilt. It has got to go. For my mental health, to give me some stress relief, it has got to go first. So I think that a lot more people actually do this than either they realize or they want to admit, because I think a lot of people think they have to perfectly follow the snowball method or the avalanche method or, some kind of imaginary debt-free community police are going to come and get you, which those people don't exist. And if someone tries to tell you in an Instagram comment or something or in a DM that you're doing it wrong, show them the door because it's none of their business. There is no right or wrong, you guys. The most important thing here is what is going to keep you motivated, what is going to help you stick this out for the long haul. Whether you go with the snowball because you want that quick win, you want one thing checked off your list, whether you go with the avalanche to save you interest, whether you go with the most hated or the one that pisses you off the most. So for some stress relief, for some peace of mind, it does not matter as long as you do it, as long as you are paying money, as long as you're paying that debt off, as long as you're making progress and you're doing something that you are going to stick to, that's going to be sustainable. Okay, that's what matters. That's what matters. Number 4, no one answered this one, but I actually have had some clients who we've done this either sometimes not first, but sometimes it's kind of like a middle of the road. Sometimes you do those quick wins with the snowball or you do most hated, like first, second, third or so somewhere in your debt. And then like towards the middle of the debt payoff timeline, they'll do like the highest monthly payment. So that's method number 4, is worrying about the highest monthly payment. So sometimes that's a car note or that is a student loan, not right now because most of the student loans are in forbearance. And that's like, hey, I need to free up that monthly cash flow. So sometimes that happens. Also with clients, if we're kind of at a standstill where we're like, I don't know, this group of like 3 or 4 debts need to be paid off. I really don't know which order. Maybe all the balances are kind of close to the same, or the interest rates are kind of close to the same. You're not really sure. Then I would go with, what is the highest monthly payment? Because if this credit card over here is like a $50 minimum and this one over here is $200, maybe the balances are close to the same, maybe the interest rates are close to the same, and you're trying to decide which one to pay off first. Let's go with the higher monthly payment. Free up that monthly cash flow quicker. That way you could apply that extra money to another debt, or have more to save, or have, give you a little bit of wiggle room with your bills or your spending or something, right? Just to free up that little bit of money, give you a little bit of breathing room. So actually nobody answered this in the Instagram survey, so I was kind of surprised, but highest monthly payment would be number 4. So number 5 is the hybrid method. And if we're being honest, I think this is probably, by the time you become debt-free, this is probably going to be your answer. This is more of a later, I think, in the journey. You've either made some quick wins with the snowball, you've gotten some high interest paid off with the avalanche, you've relieved some stress if you've paid off some of those most hated, you've freed up some monthly payments with method number 4. And by the end of it, you've got this weird hybrid of a method. So this is number 5, is a hybrid method, which is, when I asked some of my friends, this is what V did from V Frugal Fox, this is what Allie did from Financially Focused, this is what we did. I mean, by the end of it, it's like, it's some kind of Frankenstein of a plan. We started with the snowball. And then we went to some stressful debts, some time-sensitive debts. They were our tax. We had property taxes and IRS debt that we owed. So that was kind of middle of the road. And then it went to our bigger debts, which was like, I guess after that, it was just our Discover card, which was massive. It was like 11 or 12,000. So it was super big for us. So, and then it was like, we just sold the rest of our property. Those were our bigger debts. So it was like this weird hybrid of snowball, most stressful, high balance kind of hybrid. So by the end of the journey, most people have done some kind of hybrid method. So what Allie said from Financially Focused, when I asked her about her method, because I had thought that she had done Avalanche, so she was going to be my Avalanche example. And so when I actually started talking to her about it, she was like, yeah, we actually started with the Avalanche for our credit cards because highest interest, she's very numbers based. She was already motivated, so she didn't really need the snowball method to stay motivated. So they did the Avalanche with the credit cards. And then they did, they did Avalanche for the credit cards and some high interest student loans. So they avalanched that. And then they got to a point where they switched it to focusing on their truck debt to free up the monthly payment. And now that their student loans are on 0% because of, the forbearance and everything, they have kind of switched it up even more to just kind of like whatever feels good in the moment kind of thing. So they've definitely done a hybrid. And I know that V did a hybrid as well. And we kind of did a hybrid as well. So I think that when you get farther into your journey, you're going to end up with some kind of hybrid. And like what I got in the in the Instagram question box was, people saying, well, yeah, we started with Snowball and then we consolidated our student loans and it was one big lump sum for our student loans. Like we started with the Snowball, but whenever we have extra money, we apply it to the high interest to save that money. We started with the Avalanche, but now that we're getting the stimulus money, we're going to apply it to our student loans to knock them out to relieve some stress. So I think that probably a hybrid is going to be what you end up with, most likely. And it's probably the most realistic. Because honestly, I think that when we try to squeeze ourselves into a box that we don't fit in, we get super claustrophobic. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right. And we're either going to mix it up, aka doing a hybrid method, or we're going to quit. So if you start to feel claustrophobic in one plan or another, maybe stop and ask yourself, hey, is this really what I want to do? Remember that there's no debt-free police that is going to come and get you. No one has to look at your budget except you, maybe your partner, maybe your budget coach if you hire one. That's it. Random strangers on the internet don't have to look. Your friends and family don't have to look at your budget. No one else, it doesn't matter to anyone else. It's no one else's business, okay? So maybe you decide to start one way or the other, and then it starts to feel a little claustrophobic. It starts to feel like, no, I'm stressing over this debt. No, I'd like to get my car paid off. No, I'd really like to get my parents paid off. No, this one is so expensive every month. I'd like to free up some cash flow. Switch it up. Switch it up. Do whatever you need to do to keep making progress, to keep being excited, to keep being motivated, and to stick with it for the long haul. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it does not matter which method you chose to use. All that matters is that you're debt-free. That's the end game. That is the end goal. Okay? And once you're debt-free, you can say, hey, I'm debt-free. And it doesn't matter anymore which method you used. Okay? It doesn't matter anymore. All right. So I also wanted to hit you guys with a great resource that is going to help you, especially if you're just starting on your debt payoff journey. So I mentioned Marilee from Easy Budget, and you may or may not know that Marilee has this amazing debt snowball calculator that I'm a proud affiliate for, and I use it like crazy to help my one-on-one clients calculate their debt payoff date. So I'm going to link in the show notes to my affiliate link where you can get this debt snowball calculator. It's like $16, $17, worth every penny. And the magical thing about this snowball calculator is that you can, whatever order you list your debt out in, that's the order it's going to apply any extra money to. So if you want it to be a debt snowball, just put them simply smallest balance to highest balance. If you want them to be an avalanche, put the highest interest first when you're listing them out. You'll see what I mean when you get there, and that's the first step you do is list them out. If you want it to be a hybrid, if you want it to be the one that causes you the most stress, simply put it first. Whatever order you put it in, that's what it's going to do. It also gives you a spot to plug in your extra money every single month, and it'll help shave time off of your debt-free date. And it does all of this. It's so beautiful. It's so organized. And I use this all the time with my one-on-one clients because when we're planning out their debt payoff timeline, when we're planning out their goals sheet, I can go in and I can say, okay, in April, you're going to have $200 left over. In May, you're going to have $400 left over. Where can we put this? And it gives you a spot on this calculator to plug in that extra money, and you can plan ahead. Okay. Or if you say, hey, every single month, I know I have $200 extra. How much faster will that allow me to be debt free? Plug that in. Then the beautiful thing is, if you're just like playing around with your different options and you want to see which one could make you debt free quicker or which one could save you more on interest, simply rearrange the order that you list the debts in. That's what I do for my clients. I write it out. I say, hey, option 1, this is when you're going to be debt free. Option 2, this is when you're going to be debt free. Option 1, this is how much interest you're going to pay. Option 2, this is how much interest you're going to pay. Then you can go in and make an educated decision for which method you want to use and which one is best for you. Okay? And that way you can be totally confident in whichever method you choose to use. All right. So that is all for me today. I hope this episode was helpful to you. Again, check the show notes for everything that I have mentioned, and I will talk to you guys next week. Bye, guys. Thanks for hanging out for another episode of a Sunny Side Up Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend because you never know who needs to hear this message. If you haven't already, please leave a review and subscribe. Reviews and subscribers are what help the podcast grow and what help new ladies find our community. And again, thanks for hitting play on this episode and for investing some time in yourself today. Remember that I'm always here to support you and I'm always cheering you on along the way. Don't forget that everything that we mentioned in this episode will be linked in the show notes. All right, that's all for me this week. Bye, guys.